Alphonse Gabriel Capone, famously known as Al Capone, was born on January 17, 1899, in Brooklyn, New York. He was the son of Gabriel Capone, a hard-working barber, and Teresa Capone, a skilled seamstress. Both parents immigrated from Angri, a small village near Naples, Italy, seeking better opportunities in the United States. They arrived in Brooklyn in 1893, settling in the Navy Yard area at 95 Navy Street. The Capone family was one of many Italian families who moved to the United States during a significant wave of immigration. This period, spanning the late 1800s to the early 1900s, saw millions of Italians escaping poverty, overcrowding, and limited opportunities in their homeland. Al Capone was one of 9 children in a large family that valued hard work and community. His siblings included notable figures like Vincenzo, who later worked in law enforcement under the name Richard Hart, and Salvatore, also known as Frank, who would become closely involved in Al's future criminal empire. Growing up in Brooklyn, Al's early years were shaped by the bustling city life and the challenges faced by immigrant families striving to find stability in a new country. The Capone family's journey to the United States began with Gabriel and Teresa Capone, leaving their hometown of Angri, Italy, in search of a better future. Like millions of others during the late 19th century, they sought refuge from the crushing poverty, overpopulation, and limited opportunities in southern Italy. Their immigration story reflects the struggles and hopes of many Italian families who arrived in America during this era. Gabriel Capone was a skilled barber, while Teresa worked as a seamstress. The couple arrived in the United States in 1893 after first passing through the port of Rijeka, which was then part of Austria-Hungary and is now in present-day Croatia. They eventually settled in Brooklyn, New York, which was becoming a hub for Italian immigrants during the late 1800s and early 1900s. Their first home was located at 95 Navy Street in the Navy Yard area of Brooklyn. As the family grew, they relocated to the Park Slope neighborhood in 1909, offering more space for their children. Gabriel and Teresa had 9 children in total, including Alphonse, Al, Vincenzo, Richard Hart, Salvatore, Frank, and several others. The Capone siblings were a close-knit group, but each followed a unique path in life. Vincenzo, for instance, chose a career in law enforcement, distancing himself from Al's criminal activities. The Capone story is one of resilience, as they worked hard to create a stable life for their growing family amidst the challenges faced by immigrant communities in Brooklyn. Al Capone's childhood was marked by a mix of academic promise and behavioral struggles. As a young student, Al showed great potential, excelling in his studies and earning praise from his teachers. His parents, Gabriel and Teresa, were proud of his achievements, as education was seen as a pathway to a better future. However, the strict rules of his Roman Catholic school, combined with Al's fiery temperament, soon created conflicts. At the age of 14, an incident changed the course of Al's life forever. After striking a female teacher in a moment of anger, he was expelled from school. This marked the end of his formal education. From that point forward, Al began working odd jobs, including helping at a bowling alley and a candy store. These early years exposed him to the harsh realities of life in Brooklyn's crime-filled neighborhoods. It was during this period that Al encountered individuals who would greatly influence his path. Johnny Torrio, an Italian-born gangster known for his calculated and shrewd character, became a mentor figure to young Capone. Torrio's guidance, coupled with the criminal environment of Brooklyn, drew Al into a world where crime was not only a way of survival, but also an avenue for power and success. Al started associating with small gangs such as the Bowery Boys, the Junior 40 Thieves, and the Brooklyn Rippers. His growing reputation eventually led him to join the notorious 5 Points Gang, one of the most powerful criminal organizations in New York City at the time. This initiation into organized crime laid the foundation for Al Capone's future as one of history's most infamous mob bosses. In his teenage years, Al Capone began immersing himself in the criminal underworld of New York City. As a member of the 5 Points Gang, a highly influential and well-organized group based in Lower Manhattan, Capone honed the skills that would later define his career. The 5 Points Gang was infamous for its involvement in racketeering, gambling, and other illicit activities, and it served as a training ground for many young criminals. Al initially performed small-time tasks for the gang, but his charisma and resourcefulness quickly earned him the attention of senior members. Frankie Yale, a notorious racketeer and gangster, became another mentor to Capone. Yale owned the Harvard Inn, a bar in Coney Island where Al worked as a bartender and bouncer. It was during this time that Capone gained the nickname Scarface after a violent altercation with a local gangster, Frankie Galluccio, who slashed his face following an insult to his sister. The nickname, which Capone despised, became one of his most recognizable monikers. Capone's time with the 5 Points Gang and his association with figures like Johnny Torrio and Frankie Yale introduced him to the complex dynamics of organized crime. He learned about extortion, protection rackets, and the importance of loyalty within a gang. These lessons not only solidified his reputation in New York, but also prepared him for the opportunities and challenges he would face when he eventually relocated to Chicago. In 1919, Al Capone made a life-changing decision to leave New York and move to Chicago. This move was orchestrated by Johnny Torrio, a prominent gangster and mentor to Capone. Torrio had been invited to Chicago by Vincenzo Colosimo, better known as Big Jim, a powerful crime boss who controlled numerous rackets in the city, including gambling, prostitution, and extortion. Torrio saw potential in Capone and urged him to join the growing criminal enterprise in Chicago. Capone arrived in the Windy City with his young family, including his wife, May, and their son, Albert Francis, affectionately called Sonny. Initially, Capone worked as a bouncer in a brothel, but his determination and talent for organization quickly earned him Torrio's trust. Capone took on greater responsibilities, managing operations and ensuring that rival gangs did not encroach on their territory. The introduction of Prohibition in 1920 created a lucrative opportunity for organized crime, and Torrio and Capone capitalized on the demand for illegal alcohol. Following the mysterious murder of Big Jim Colosimo in 1920, Torrio became the new leader of the organization, with Capone serving as his right-hand man. Together, they expanded their operations, establishing bootlegging routes, speakeasies, and an extensive network of bribed officials to evade law enforcement. By the mid-1920s, the group was widely known as the Chicago Outfit, and its influence extended far beyond the city. This marked the beginning of Capone's rise as a dominant figure in organized crime, setting the stage for his eventual takeover of the Chicago underworld. The implementation of Prohibition in 1920 under the 18th Amendment created an unparalleled opportunity for organized crime in the United States. Al Capone, under the guidance of Johnny Torrio, seized this moment to build a criminal empire centered around the illegal production, transportation, and sale of alcohol. Known as the Chicago Outfit, their operation became one of the most powerful and profitable in the country. Capone and Torrio developed innovative strategies to meet the skyrocketing demand for alcohol. They established connections with Canadian suppliers to smuggle liquor across the Great Lakes and set up clandestine distilleries and breweries to produce alcohol locally. These activities were supported by a network of speakeasies and bribed officials, ensuring that their operations ran smoothly and without interference from law enforcement. As the outfit's wealth and power grew, so did their ability to eliminate competition. Capone's reputation for violence and intimidation was cemented as rival gangs and competitors were systematically driven out or eradicated. The era became known for brutal gang wars, with Chicago often referred to as the gangster capital of the nation. By the mid-1920s, Al Capone had become the face of the Chicago outfit, following Torrio's decision to retire after an assassination attempt. Capone's lavish lifestyle and ability to manipulate the media earned him national attention, while his philanthropic gestures, such as funding soup kitchens, endeared him to the public. However, his growing notoriety also made him a target for law enforcement and rival gangs. The Prohibition era was the foundation of Capone's empire, providing him the means to amass immense wealth and power, but it also set the stage for the conflicts and challenges that would ultimately lead to his downfall. As Al Capone's power in Chicago grew, so did his list of enemies and high-profile incidents. The most significant threats came from rival gangs, particularly the North Side Gang, led by figures like Dean O'Banion and later Bugs Moran. These rivalries were marked by violent confrontations and a constant struggle for control over lucrative bootlegging territories. One notable incident occurred in 1924 when Capone's ally, Johnny Torrio, orchestrated the assassination of Dean O'Banion at his flower shop. This act escalated tensions between the Chicago outfit and the North Side Gang, sparking a bloody gang war that would last for years. The conflict saw multiple assassination attempts on both Torrio and Capone. In 1925, Torrio narrowly survived an ambush, leading him to retire and pass leadership of the outfit to Capone. Under Capone's command, the outfit continued to expand its influence. However, Capone's confrontational approach often drew unwanted attention. A dramatic attack on Capone in 1926 by North Side gunmen using submachine guns became a defining moment in Chicago's gang wars. Despite the intensity of these attacks, Capone managed to survive and solidify his position as the dominant crime boss in the city. These rivalries and incidents shaped Capone's legacy, illustrating his ability to navigate a violent and volatile underworld while maintaining his hold on power. However, they also contributed to his growing notoriety, which ultimately made him a prime target for law enforcement. The St. Valentine's Day Massacre, which occurred on February 14, 1929, remains one of the most infamous events in Al Capone's criminal career. It marked a violent turning point in the ongoing rivalry between Capone's Chicago outfit and the North Side Gang, led by Bugs Moran. The massacre was a calculated effort by Capone to eliminate Moran and solidify his dominance over Chicago's underworld. The plan was set in motion when Capone's men lured Moran's associates to a garage on North Clark Street with the promise of a discounted shipment of whiskey. Posing as police officers, Capone's gunmen entered the garage and ordered the 7 men present to line up against the wall. Once their guard was down, the gunmen opened fire with submachine guns, killing all 7 victims in a gruesome display of power. Although Bugs Moran, the intended target, narrowly escaped by arriving late, the massacre shocked the public and drew national attention to the violence of Chicago's gang wars. The brutality of the killings cemented Capone's reputation as a ruthless crime boss. However, it also painted a target on his back, as law enforcement intensified their efforts to dismantle his operations. The St. Valentine's Day Massacre symbolized the peak of gang violence during Prohibition. While it demonstrated Capone's willingness to use extreme measures to maintain control, it also contributed to his eventual downfall by increasing public outrage and government scrutiny. Al Capone's criminal empire began to crumble in the late 1920s as law enforcement and government agencies intensified their efforts to bring him to justice. Despite his efforts to maintain a facade of respectability, Capone's illegal activities and public persona made him a high-profile target. The turning point came when federal authorities shifted their focus from his violent crimes to his financial dealings, specifically tax evasion. The Internal Revenue Service, led by investigator Frank J. Wilson, meticulously built a case against Capone by examining his lavish lifestyle and unreported income. In 1931, Capone was charged with income tax evasion for failing to pay taxes on the immense wealth generated by his illegal enterprises. Capone initially attempted to negotiate a plea deal, agreeing to serve a short sentence, but the presiding judge, James Herbert Wilkerson, rejected the arrangement. During the trial, prosecutors presented compelling evidence of Capone's undeclared income, including testimony from witnesses and detailed records of his extravagant spending. Despite his legal team's efforts to argue that his wealth came from gambling losses, the jury found Capone guilty on several counts of tax evasion. In October 1931, he was sentenced to 11 years in federal prison, fined $50,000, and ordered to pay back taxes and court costs. Capone began his prison sentence at the Atlanta Penitentiary, but was later transferred to Alcatraz, where his health rapidly declined due to untreated syphilis. By the time he was released in 1939, Capone's mental and physical condition had deteriorated significantly, effectively ending his reign as one of history's most notorious mob bosses. After his release from Alcatraz in 1939, Al Capone returned to his family home on Palm Island in Florida. His time in prison had taken a significant toll on his health, as advanced syphilis had severely impaired his physical and mental capabilities. Medical evaluations revealed that his cognitive functions had diminished to that of a 12-year-old, and he required constant care. Despite his diminished state, Capone remained surrounded by his family, particularly his devoted wife, Maid. She had stood by him through his criminal trials, imprisonment, and eventual release, ensuring he received the best care possible. Capone spent his remaining years in relative obscurity, far removed from the power and notoriety he had once wielded. In January 1947, Capone suffered a stroke from which he initially showed signs of recovery. However, he soon developed pneumonia and subsequently experienced a fatal cardiac arrest on January 25, 1947, just a week after his 48th birthday. Capone passed away at his Palm Island estate, surrounded by his loved ones. Following a private funeral in Chicago, Capone was buried at Mount Olivet Cemetery. His remains, along with those of his father and brother, were later moved to Mount Carmel Cemetery in Illinois, marking the final chapter in the life of one of history's most infamous crime figures. Al Capone's legacy is a complex mix of infamy, fascination, and enduring cultural impact. As one of the most notorious figures of the Prohibition era, he symbolized the rise of organized crime and the violent struggles for power that defined the 1920s. Despite his criminal activities, Capone's larger-than-life persona and ability to manipulate public perception turned him into an anti-hero for some, earning nicknames such as Scarface and Public Enemy Number 1. His story has inspired countless books, movies, and documentaries, perpetuating the mystique of the mob boss who rose to power through cunning, brutality, and charisma. From his role in the St. Valentine's Day Massacre to his ultimate conviction for tax evasion, Capone's life serves as a cautionary tale about the consequences of unchecked ambition and the long arm of justice. Capone's impact on Chicago and American culture is still felt today. While he is remembered for the violence and corruption that plagued the era, his story also highlights the social and economic conditions that fueled the rise of organized crime. What do you think about Al Capone? Was he a modern-day Robin Hood or a ruthless gangster? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more fascinating stories. Thank you very much for watching.